Hello everyone, welcome to Midnight Story Channel. I'm here to help you today. I know many of you listen to these stories to help you drift off to sleep, and I'm honored to be part of your journey. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Also, where are you from and what time are you watching now? Take a deep breath, get comfortable, and allow yourself to relax. Your story is about to begin. The first time the pickup truck roared past, I barely registered it. A fleeting blur of chrome under the star-strewn Nevada sky. The second time, a prickle of doubt stirred in my gut. By the fourth pass, my pulse thundered louder than the dying hum of my stalled coupe. Stranded on a desolate ribbon of asphalt cutting through the Mojave. As I sat there, the darkness pressing against my window like a living thing, I realized with a sinking dread that I wasn't just stuck. I was prey. My name's Ethan, and until that night, I'd never dwelled on how exposed we are on the open road, where the world shrinks to a single lane and the shadows hold dominion. I was driving home to San Diego from a tech expo in Las Vegas, opting for the scenic route to savor the solitude after days of shaking hands and swapping business cards. It was well past 1 a.m., and I was alone on State Route 375, a lonely stretch flanked by Joshua trees and endless dunes. The night was a painter's dream, stars blazing in a velvet sky, the moon casting a silver sheen over the desert's jagged contours. My radio crooned a Springsteen ballad, and I drummed my fingers on the wheel, lulled into a rare calm. Then my car faltered. At first, it was a subtle hiccup like a missed heartbeat. Then the engine sputtered. The dashboard lights flared in a frantic dance, and the car lurched to a stop. I coasted to the shoulder just as it gave up entirely, the silence crashing down like a physical weight. "Come on," I muttered, twisting the key. Nothing. Not a groan, not a spark. I grabbed my phone. Predictably, no bars. The desert doesn't care for connectivity. For a moment, I sat there weighing my options. I had a half-empty bottle of Gatorade and a bag of pretzels. But no flashlight, no emergency kit. The nearest town, Rachel, was a good 20 miles off. And in this inky blackness, walking felt like tempting fate. My best hope was another driver, someone kind enough to stop for a stranded fool. That's when I saw the headlights in my side mirror, twin orbs piercing the night. Relief surged through me as the pickup approached, its engine a low growl. I flicked on my hazards, stepped out, and waved my arms like a marooned sailor, but the truck didn't slow. It barreled past, kicking up a gritty cloud that stung my eyes and throat. Through the dust, I glimpsed a hulking black pickup, its taillights winking red before vanishing into the dark. "Real nice," I growled, climbing back into my car. I tried the ignition again, more out of defiance than hope. Dead. As I slumped back, plotting my next move, headlights flared again in my mirror. My heart lifted. Another car, maybe. But as it drew closer, I froze. It was the same black pickup looping back. A flicker of unease sparked in my chest. Maybe they'd seen my plight and turned around to help. But the truck sped by again, and this time I swear it eased off the gas just enough for me to catch the driver's silhouette. Head turned, staring right at me. The unease bloomed into something sharper. Twice could be chance, but this felt deliberate. Like a predator circling. I locked my doors, suddenly hyper-aware of my vulnerability. A lone man in a dead car, miles from anywhere. The desert, so mesmerizing earlier, now loomed vast and hostile. Every crevice a potential hiding place. I waited, minutes stretching into eternity, my eyes glued to the mirrors. 10 minutes. 15. I was starting to think I'd overreacted when those headlights reappeared, steady and relentless. This time, the pickup slowed as it approached, crawling past at a pace that let me see the driver. A lone figure, face obscured by the glare. My palms slicked with sweat, my breath shallow. This wasn't normal. No one prowls a deserted highway at this hour unless they're hunting something or someone. I checked my phone again. Still no signal. Flagging down the next car felt like a gamble now. What if it was the pickup again? What if it stopped? Time dragged, each second a wait. I flinched at every sound. The groan of my cooling engine, the skitter of pebbles in the wind. Then there they were again. Headlights, the same black pickup creeping closer. It slowed to a near stop beside me, and I ducked low, heart hammering, praying to be invisible. Through the dazzle of its lights, I saw the driver lean toward my car, as if peering in. The certainty hit me like a blow. Whoever this was, they weren't here to help. They were playing with me, savoring the chase. I made a snap decision. Staying here was a death sentence. I grabbed my phone and the Gatorade, took a steadying breath, and eased open the door. The desert air was sharp, the silence absolute. I started walking, hugging the road's edge, my eyes flicking between the path ahead and the darkness behind. I'd gone maybe a quarter mile when headlights bloomed again, faster this time. My stomach plummeted. It was coming back. Panic clawed at me. I scanned for cover, but the desert offered nothing. Just sand and scrub stretching to the horizon. The pickup was closing in, its growl filling the air. In desperation, I dove off the road, scrambling into a shallow gully and pressing myself flat. I held my breath as the truck roared closer, then slowed, tires crunching on gravel as it pulled onto the shoulder. The engine idled, then cut off. A door creaked open. Footsteps approached, deliberate and unhurried. I squeezed my eyes shut, every muscle taut, certain this was the end. "Hey, you okay down there?" The voice was calm, female, laced with concern. My eyes snapped open. A woman stood above me, flashlight in hand, her silhouette framed by the starlight. What? I stammered, my mind reeling. "Saw your car back there," she said, extending a hand. "I'm with the highway patrol. Got a report of a stranded vehicle, but you were hard to find. You hurt?" As she helped me up, I saw her vehicle clearly, an SUV with a light bar, not the black pickup I'd feared. In my terror, I'd misread the shape, the lights. "You kept driving past," I said, still dazed, trying to piece it together. She nodded. "I was searching for you. Your car was empty, so I figured you'd started walking. Did a few loops to spot you." The relief was so overwhelming, I nearly laughed, the sound raw and unsteady. Her name was Officer Lena, and she was a godsend. She drove me back to my car, called for a tow, and stayed until it arrived, her SUV's heater a balm against the desert chill. As we waited, she explained that this stretch of road was notorious for dead zones. No cell service, no help for miles. "The desert messes with your head," she said kindly. "The quiet, the dark, it's a breeding ground for fear." Watching my car get hoisted onto the tow truck, I felt a mix of chagrin and lingering disquiet. Lena was right. I'd let my mind spin a horror story out of nothing. But the memory of that fear, the bone-deep conviction that I was hunted, clung to me. Months later, I still think about it. I've driven that route since, always by day, always with a full tank and a charged phone. Each time I murmur thanks to Lena, the patrol officer who unknowingly pulled me back from the edge of my own dread. Yet sometimes, on solitary night drives, I catch myself glancing at the rearview mirror more than I should. Because the truth is, out there on those endless roads, you can never be sure what's watching from the shadows, or if the real danger lies in the stories we tell ourselves when the world goes quiet. The shovel bit into the earth, and a shock vibrated through my wrist as it struck something solid. I paused, wiping grime-streaked sweat from my forehead, my breath clouding in the chilly dusk. My daughter Lily and I had been digging for hours, carving out a new irrigation ditch for the orchard. The ground was supposed to be soft clay for another dozen feet. I glanced at Lily, her face smudged with dirt as she worked beside me. "Grab the lantern, kid," I said, my voice tight. "I think we've hit something." Little did I know that dull thud would unravel a secret that would haunt us both. My name's Caleb, and 6 months ago, I inherited this orchard in rural Oregon from my great-aunt Margaret. It was a ramshackle spread. Gnarled apple trees, a sagging barn, a farmhouse creaking with age. But it was a lifeline. After a messy divorce, Lily and I needed a fresh start, and the orchard promised hard work and quiet days. We'd thrown ourselves into it, mending fences, pruning branches, and now digging this ditch to keep the trees alive. The old well had dried up years ago, and without water, this place would wither. Lily swung the lantern's beam over the spot where my shovel had stopped. The light glinted off something smooth and metallic, a sharp contrast to the loamy soil. "What's that, Dad?" she asked, her voice a mix of wonder and wariness. I shrugged, scraping away more dirt with my hands. "Dunno, kid. Let's see." As we dug, the object revealed itself. A metal chest, roughly the size of a carry-on suitcase, its surface pitted with rust and age. My mind raced. A forgotten heirloom, a cache of old tools, or just junk buried and left to rot? It took another hour of careful digging to free the chest from the earth's grip. By the time we hauled it to the barn, the sun had dipped below the hills, painting the orchard in shades of twilight. We set the chest under the barn's flickering bulb, both of us quiet, caught in our own thoughts about what might lie inside. Up close, the chest was heavier than it looked, its once polished surface scarred by time. A faint etching marred one side, but corrosion had rendered it unreadable. "Should we open it?" Lily asked, her eyes bright with excitement. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to call the sheriff, or maybe a historian. What if this was something serious? But curiosity, that old temptress, won out. "All right," I said, grabbing a pry bar. "Step back." The lid resisted, groaning under the bar's pressure, then gave way with a screech. A sour, damp smell wafted out, like wet stone and forgotten cellars. Inside, wrapped in crumbling oilcloth, was a trove of papers, photographs, and a small leather-bound notebook. I lifted the top photo, holding it to the light. It showed a young woman, maybe 20, her smile soft against the backdrop of this very orchard. The image was old, 1950s. Judging by her dress and the photo's grainy sepia, I flipped it over. In faded ink, Eleanor Grayson, 1957. Lily peered over my shoulder. "Who's she, Dad?" I shook my head, a nagging unease stirring. The name Grayson tugged at a memory, but I couldn't place it. We sifted through the chest's contents for the next hour. More photos, all of Eleanor, standing by the barn, picking apples, laughing under a tree. There were letters, brittle and yellowed, and newspaper clippings. The notebook was a journal, its pages filled with tight, meticulous handwriting. As I skimmed it, a clipping slipped out, its headline like a punch to the gut. "Local woman vanishes without trace." My pulse quickened as I read. Eleanor Grayson, age 22, had disappeared from her family's orchard in the summer of 1957. Despite a massive search, no sign of her was ever found. Suspicion fell on her father, Thomas Grayson, my great-aunt's husband, but no charges were filed for lack of evidence. "Dad," Lily's voice pulled me back. "What's wrong?" I met her wide eyes, forcing my voice to stay steady. "Lily, I think we've stumbled onto something big. This might be evidence in a decades-old missing persons case." Her face lit up. "Like a real mystery?" I nodded, my mind spinning. "Yeah, kid, a real mystery." I gathered the documents carefully, preserving every fragile page. "We need to call the police." The next few hours were chaos. Sheriff's deputies descended on the orchard, followed by detectives and a forensic team. Our quiet haven became a hive of activity. flashlights slicing through the dark as they cataloged the chest. Lily and I were questioned separately, recounting how we'd found it. By midnight, the chest was gone, taken as evidence, and we were told to keep quiet about the case. No small ask in a small town. Sleep didn't come that night. I sat at the kitchen table, a cold mug of tea untouched, staring out at the shadowed orchard. Who was Eleanor Grayson? And why did her name feel like a ghost in my memory? The next morning, I drove to the county library, determined to dig deeper. The archives were a treasure trove, microfilm reels of the town's newspaper, stretching back decades. I spent hours piecing together the Grayson case. Eleanor had been engaged, planning to leave the orchard for a new life. Her father, Thomas, was the last to see her, claiming she'd gone to town for errands. No one believed him, but no proof ever surfaced. As I read, a cold realization settled in. Thomas Grayson was my great-aunt Margaret's husband, the man who'd owned this land before her. A memory flickered. My mother, years ago, mentioning a cousin who'd vanished when she was a girl. Eleanor. My stomach twisted. Had I inherited not just an orchard, but a legacy of secrets? Back home, a police cruiser waited in the drive. Detective Alvarez, a sharp-eyed woman leading the case, was there. "Mr. Reed," she said as I stepped out of my truck, "we need to talk." We sat in the kitchen, the same table where I'd spent a sleepless night. She didn't mince words. "DNA on items in the chest matches Eleanor Grayson. We're treating this as a homicide now." I nodded, my throat tight. "Did you know anything about this before you found the chest?" she asked, her gaze piercing. "No," I said firmly. "I got this place from my great-aunt 6 months ago. Never met Thomas Grayson." Her eyes narrowed. "Your great-aunt's husband?" I explained what I'd learned at the library, the family connection I'd only just uncovered. Alvarez leaned back, processing. "This complicates things. We'll need to search the property thoroughly. You and your daughter might need to stay elsewhere for a bit." The next weeks were a descent into chaos. The orchard became a crime scene, with forensic teams combing every acre. Lily and I holed up in a motel, watching our new life unravel from afar. The story broke in the local paper, then went national. Reporters and true crime buffs swarmed our town, hungry for details about the chest, Eleanor, and the man who'd inherited her mystery. Lily, ever perceptive, asked the question I dodged. "Dad, do you think Great-Uncle Thomas did it? Do you think he hurt Eleanor?" I pulled her close, wishing for a better answer. "I don't know, kid. I just don't know." As the investigation dragged on, fragments of the past emerged. Old case files were dusted off. Witnesses, now elderly, re-interviewed. Eleanor had dreamed of leaving the orchard, clashing with Thomas, who wanted her to stay and work the land. But there was no confession, no smoking gun, just whispers of a family fractured by secrets. After 2 months, we were allowed back. The police found no further evidence, and the case, though open, went cold. The orchard felt different now, every gust through the trees carrying an echo of loss. I avoided the ditch where we'd found the chest, half expecting Eleanor's shadow to linger. We stayed partly because we had nowhere else to go, partly because it felt like we owed Eleanor something, to uncover her truth, to honor her memory. The orchard, meant to be our salvation, now felt stained, haunted by a tragedy we'd unearthed. Yet we pressed on, tending the trees, building a life atop the past. Every time I lift a shovel, I can't help but wonder what else lies buried beneath this land. Some secrets, I suspect, are better left undisturbed. But Eleanor's story is part of us now, and somehow we'll carry it forward, living in the shadow of her unanswered questions, determined to make this place our own. The first time I glimpsed the silver SUV in my rearview mirror, it was just another speck on the endless highway, unremarkable amidst the blur of Midwest cornfields. The second time, a faint unease stirred, like a whisper at the edge of my mind. By the fifth, my hands were slick with sweat, gripping the wheel so tightly my knuckles ached. What had begun as a carefree road trip with my partner, Clara, had twisted into a relentless nightmare, each mile pulling us closer to a reckoning I knew we couldn't outrun. As I stole another glance at those now familiar headlights, a chilling certainty settled in my bones. Our past was closing in, and it was driving a silver SUV. My name's Noah, and until 3 days ago, I thought I understood fear. I'd felt it before. Everyone has. But the kind of terror that burrows into your marrow and reshapes the world, that was new. It all started with a vehicle that refused to fade into the distance. Claire and I had been plotting this cross-country drive for months, a break from our grinding jobs in Chicago. The plan was simple: cruise from Illinois to Oregon, meandering through small towns, soaking in the vastness of the country, and rediscovering each other away from the city's clamor. The first 2 days were a dream, blasting 80s hits, gorging on diner fries, and marveling at the open plains under skies that seemed to stretch forever. We were somewhere in Nebraska, the road flanked by golden fields, when I first noticed the silver SUV. It was a fleeting glimpse. A few cars back, its sleek shape blending into the flow of traffic. I didn't give it a second thought. Why would I? It was just another traveler on a busy interstate. But an hour later, when we pulled into a gas station, I saw it again, easing into a pump across the lot. Coincidence, I told myself. Plenty of people need fuel. It wasn't until we stopped for lunch at a roadside cafe in some nowhere town that the first thread of doubt unraveled. As we left, I spotted the same SUV sliding into the gravel lot, its tinted windows gleaming like dark eyes. I mentioned it to Clara as we merged back onto the highway. "Hey, does that silver SUV look familiar?" She glanced back, then shrugged. "Maybe. It's a common model, right? Probably just someone headed the same way." Her logic was sound, but I couldn't shake the itch in my gut. I started watching my mirrors, tracking the SUV's movements. Sure enough, it was always there, never too close, never too far, a constant shadow trailing our every move. By the time we crossed into Wyoming, I was convinced we were being followed. The SUV was at every gas station, every rest area, every scenic pull-off. Clara noticed my tension, her brow furrowing. "Noah, you're freaking yourself out," she said. But there was a waver in her voice, like she was trying to convince herself too. "Why would anyone follow us? We're nobody." I had no answer, but the evidence was undeniable. As we neared Cheyenne, I made a decision. "We're going to shake them," I told Clara, veering onto an unexpected exit. "Noah, what the hell?" she gasped, clutching the armrest as I swung onto a narrow county road. "Trust me," I said, my eyes darting between the road and the mirror. "If they're really tailing us, we'll know." I wove through a labyrinth of back roads, making sharp turns, doubling back, my heart pounding with every glance at the empty pavement behind us. For a moment, I thought we'd lost them, but as we rejoined the main road, there it was, the silver SUV, glinting in the fading light, right where it had always been. "Oh, God," Clara whispered, her face pale. "You were right." Fear hardened into resolve. I floored the gas, weaving through sparse traffic, taking random exits in dirt tracks. But the SUV matched every move with eerie precision, always just within sight. As dusk bled into night, we found ourselves on a desolate two-lane road. The world reduced to our headlights and the SUV's relentless glow in our mirrors. "We can't keep running," I said, my voice taut. "This has to end." Clara's eyes were wide, her voice trembling. "Are you sure that's safe?" I wasn't, but our gas was low and exhaustion was clawing at us both. "We're out of options," I said. Ahead, a gravel turnoff led to an empty field. Without signaling, I swerved onto it, the car rattling over ruts. The SUV followed, its lights carving through the dust I kicked up. I stopped abruptly, cutting the engine. The SUV pulled up behind us, its headlights bathing our car in a stark glare. "Stay here," I told Clara, my pulse a drumbeat in my ears. "Lock the doors. If anything goes wrong, drive and don't look back." Before she could argue, I was out, squinting into the blinding light. "Who are you?" I shouted, my voice cracking with adrenaline. "Why are you following us?" Silence stretched, thick and oppressive. Then slowly the driver's door opened. A figure stepped out, backlit, features lost in shadow. "Noah," a voice called, rough but achingly familiar. My knees buckled. "Is that you?" As the figure moved closer, the headlights caught his face. Lined, graying, but unmistakable. My father, the man who'd walked out on my mother and me when I was 16. "Dad," I whispered, the word tasting foreign. "What are you doing here?" He took a step forward, hands raised as if to ward off my shock. "I saw you back in Nebraska. I couldn't believe it was you. I've been trying to find the courage to talk." Clara's door creaked open behind me. "Noah, what's happening?" My father's gaze flicked to her, then back to me. "This your partner?" I nodded, words failing me. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice breaking. "I'm so sorry for everything. When I saw you, I couldn't let you go without trying to make it right." A torrent of questions surged. Where had he been? Why now? Why tail us like some creep? But what came out was, "You scared us half to death." He let out a shaky laugh, raw with regret. "I know, I didn't mean to. I kept chickening out, losing my nerve every time I got close." Clara stepped beside me, her hand finding mine. "Maybe we should talk," she said softly. "There's a diner a few miles back. We could grab coffee, figure this out." I looked at her, then at my father, torn between rage and a flicker of something softer. Curiosity, maybe, or the ghost of a bond I thought I'd buried. "Fine," I said at last, "but we drive separately. And if you pull anything, we're gone. Got it?" Relief flooded his face. "Of course, whatever you need, Noah." We drove to the diner, the SUV's lights now ahead of us, a strange reversal. Clara squeezed my hand. "You okay?" I shook my head. "I don't know. I never thought I'd see him again. I don't know what I feel." She leaned over, her lips brushing my cheek. "Whatever happens, we'll face it together. That's what this trip's about, right? Us together." I managed a faint smile. She was right. We'd set out to shed our baggage to carve out something new. I never imagined that baggage would chase us across 3 states. At the diner, the smell of grease and coffee grounded me as we slid into a booth across from my father. I didn't know what lay ahead, what apologies he'd offer, what wounds we'd reopen. I didn't know if forgiveness was possible or if I even wanted it. But one thing was clear. This road trip had veered into uncharted territory, not just across the map, but into the tangled mess of my past. With Clara by my side, I stepped into that diner, ready to hear his story, and maybe, just maybe, to begin writing a new chapter of our own. As the jukebox hummed and the late-night hum of strangers filled the air, I realized the most profound journeys aren't about the miles you cover. They're about the detours that force you to confront what you've spent years outrunning. The last time I saw Mara Lynn, she was humming softly, her silhouette framed against the dawn's first blush over the Caribbean. That image is etched in my mind, her dark hair catching the sea breeze, a tired smile tugging at her lips as she finished her shift. I didn't know then that it would be the final glimpse I'd have of her, that within hours she'd vanish without a trace, leaving only questions and a gnawing dread that threatened to unravel everything I thought I knew. My name's Julian Reyes, and as a security officer aboard the Sapphire Star, a gleaming cruise ship slicing through turquoise waters, I thought I'd seen it all, but Mara's disappearance was a mystery unlike any other, one that would haunt me long after the ship docked. I'd been with the cruise line for 4 years, accustomed to the rhythm of life at sea, rowdy passengers, petty thefts, the occasional medical scare. Nothing I couldn't handle with a calm word or a firm hand. Mara, a guest services rep, was a friend, someone I'd bonded with over late-night coffee in the crew mess, swapping stories of life back on land. She was sharp, warm, the kind of person who made the long shifts bearable. That morning, my shift started at 5 a.m., the ship quiet as I patrolled the decks and corridors. Passing the main lobby, I spotted Mara at the reception desk, wrapping up her graveyard shift. "Morning, Julian," she called, stifling a yawn. "Got big plans for today?" I grinned, leaning against the counter. "Just keeping the chaos at bay. You look like you're running on fumes." "Get some rest," she laughed, gathering her things. "Oh, I will, but first, I'm catching the sunrise from that spot on deck 12. Want to come?" I hesitated. Duty called, but the ship was calm, and the promise of fresh air was tempting. "Sure," I said. "Why not?" We climbed to a secluded corner of deck 12, the ocean stretching endless before us. Mara leaned against the railing, closing her eyes as the salty breeze washed over her. "This never gets old," she murmured. "No matter how many cruises, the sea always feels like a miracle." I watched her, struck by her serenity. We'd grown close, but there was still so much I didn't know about her. Her dreams, her past. "How'd you end up here?" I asked, curious. "Working the high seas?" She opened her eyes, a wistful glint in them. 6 years ago, I needed an escape after grad school. Thought I'd do one season, see the world, but I fell in love with it. The ports, the people, the freedom. I nodded, understanding. The sea had a way of hooking you. We talked as the sky bloomed with pinks and golds, the sun cresting the horizon. Finally, Mara yawned again. "Time for bed," she said. "Thanks for the company. Julian, catch you later." I watched her go, her figure fading down the stairwell. That was the last I saw of her. My shift rolled on, uneventful, checking IDs, breaking up a tipsy argument in the casino, routine stuff. It wasn't until the evening staff briefing that alarm bells rang. Mara was missing. "Has anyone seen Lynn?" our supervisor, Carla, asked, her brow creased as she scanned her clipboard. "She was due on an hour ago." Murmurs rippled through the room. Mara was never late, never one to shirk a shift. "I saw her this morning," I offered. "She was headed to her cabin after the night shift." Carla's frown deepened. "Julian? Check her quarters, make sure she's okay." Unease coiled in my gut as I made my way to the crew deck. I knocked on Mara's door, calling her name. No answer. Using my master key, I entered, half expecting to find her passed out from exhaustion. The cabin was empty. Her bed was pristine, untouched since the morning. Her uniform for the evening shift hung neatly in the closet, her phone silent on the nightstand. I radioed Carla. "She's not here. Cabin looks like she hasn't been back since this morning." A long pause crackled over the radio. "Initiate search protocol," Carla ordered. The next hours were a whirlwind. We scoured the ship. Engine rooms, storage closets, every deck from bow to stern. Security footage was reviewed, crew and passengers questioned. Nothing. The last trace of Mara was a grainy clip from a hallway camera at 6:07 a.m., showing her entering her cabin and shutting the door. After that, she was gone, as if the ship itself had swallowed her whole. As night deepened, tension gripped the Sapphire Star. Passengers sensed the heightened security, their whispers growing into rumors. A fall overboard, a runaway. Worse, by morning we faced the grim reality. We had a missing person. The captain made a ship-wide announcement, Mara's photo flashing on every screen, urging anyone with information to come forward. We alerted the Coast Guard and the cruise line's headquarters. But the vast Caribbean offered little hope. A person lost at sea was a needle in an infinite haystack. Guilt gnawed at me. If I'd walked her to her cabin, checked on her sooner, could I have changed things? The memory of her humming at sunrise looped in my mind, a cruel contrast to the void she'd left. The investigation intensified. I recounted our last conversation to a steely-eyed detective from the ship's security team. Did she seem upset? Distracted? Mention any plans? He pressed. I shook my head. She was fine, happy even. Said she was going to sleep. He leaned forward, eyes narrowing. And you're certain she went into her cabin? Yes, I said, frustration creeping in. The footage backs me up. He scribbled a note. No way she could have left without being seen. I faltered. The crew deck's monitored 24/7. It shouldn't be possible. But the words felt hollow. If it wasn't possible, then what had happened? Days bled into weeks, and the mystery only thickened. Mara's cabin was combed through. No signs of a struggle, her belongings all accounted for. Her passport, wallet, even her favorite necklace remained. Theories swirled among the crew. An accident overboard, though how she'd gone unnoticed was a stretch. Suicide dismissed by those who knew her zest for life, or the darkest whisper that someone on board was responsible. A predator hiding among us? The thought chilled me. The idea that a colleague or passenger could be a killer walking the same decks. The Sapphire Star completed its itinerary and returned to port, where forensic teams tore through Mara's cabin and the ship's records. Still, no answers. Mara's family arrived, their grief a palpable weight. I watched from a distance as they met with investigators, her mother's sobs echoing in the terminal. I wanted to offer comfort, but what could I say? The ship sailed again, a new face at the reception desk, the rhythm of cruises resuming like a heartbeat. But for those of us who'd known Mara, who'd searched for her, nothing was the same. I stayed on, unable to leave while her fate remained a void. Each new port kindled a flicker of hope, a clue, a sighting. But months passed and the flicker dimmed. In the dead of night, I'd find myself on deck 12, staring at the sea's endless black, picturing Mara's smile, her voice humming against the wind. I wondered if she was out there, somewhere, or if the ocean held her secret in its depths. Mara Lynn's disappearance remains an open wound, a ghost story whispered among cruise ship crews. For me, it's a reminder of how fragile our safety is, how swiftly a life can dissolve into nothing. Every time I pass a cabin door or glance at a security feed, I brace for the impossible. Could it happen again? On this floating palace of glass and steel, adrift in an indifferent sea, are any of us truly safe? The Sapphire Star sails on, carrying its cargo of revelers and secrets. And somewhere out there, perhaps Mara's hum still lingers, carried by the waves, a melody lost to the abyss. The first slash across the tense fabric was so clean, so precise, it might have been mistaken for an artist's stroke. I ran my fingers along the frayed edge, the nylon parting like a wound under my touch. Whatever made this cut wasn't just sharp, it was cruelly so. As the last light of day bled through the gash, casting jagged shadows over the abandoned campsite, a chill settled in my chest. My best friend, Tara, and I had stumbled into something far darker than a bear's passing in this remote clearing deep in the Great Smoky Mountains. The air felt wrong, heavy with a silence that swallowed sound, and I knew we weren't alone. My name's Lucas, and for the past month, Tara and I had been trekking the Appalachian Trail, seasoned hikers who thrived on the wild's challenges. We'd faced storms, blisters, and the occasional skittish wildlife, but nothing in our years of backcountry adventures prepared us for what we found in that secluded hollow. The day had begun like any other. Up at dawn, breaking camp to cover a solid 15 miles before dusk. The weather was crisp, the trail dappled with autumn's first gold, and we moved with the easy rhythm of long days on the path. Late afternoon, Tara's sharp eyes caught something off trail. "Lucas, look at this," she called, pointing to a gnarled oak. Carved into its bark was a rough symbol, a circle bisected by a crooked slash. The cuts fresh, sap still weeping. "Odd," I muttered, tracing the mark. "Not a blaze I've ever seen." Tara shrugged. "Probably some hiker's idea of a prank." We pressed on, but a quiet unease took root. The forest, usually alive with bird song and the rustle of squirrels, seemed muted, as if holding its breath. More than once, I thought I saw movement in the corner of my eye, always gone when I turned. As the sun dipped toward the ridges, we scouted for a campsite and found the clearing, a perfect shelf of flat ground tucked between mossy boulders, a creek gurgling nearby. But as we approached, the scene stopped us cold. A campsite lay abandoned, frozen in disarray, as if its owners had fled mid-breath. A tent sagged in the center, its door flapping in the breeze. A cold fire pit cradled a dented pot, ashes long dead. Backpacks and gear were strewn about, untouched by time or weather. Tara and I exchanged a look. This wasn't right. Even careless campers clean up before moving on. "Hello," Tara called, her voice echoing off the rocks. Only the creek's murmur answered. We stepped closer, cautious, and that's when I saw the slashes. Dozens of them, riddling the tent's fabric, each cut deliberate, surgical. "What the hell?" I whispered, peering inside. The interior was chaos. Sleeping bags shredded, clothes scattered, a cracked headlamp casting eerie flickers across a small weathered journal. I picked up the journal, its pages warped by damp. The final entry, scrawled in a trembling hand, read, "Day 4, it's still out there. Circles the camp at night. They say I'm losing it, but I saw it, those eyes. Not a bear, not anything I know. God, if it gets in." I showed Tara, watching her face drain of color. "We should go," she said, barely audible. But as I turned to leave, something glinted under a torn sleeping bag, a digital camera half buried in the dirt. My hands shook as I powered it on, praying it still worked. The screen flickered to life, displaying the last photo. My breath caught. The image was dark, taken at night. But there, at the frame's edge, caught in the flash's glare, was something, a shape, almost human but wrong. Its limbs too long, its form too thin, eyes glinting like polished obsidian. I dropped the camera, stumbling back. "We're leaving," I said, voice hoarse. "Now!" But the sun was gone, the forest sinking into twilight, shadows pooling like ink. Tara was already shouldering her pack. "We'll hike through the night if we have to," she said, her voice taut. I nodded, grabbing my gear, but a flash of metal caught my eye. A small silver pendant, half sunk in the soil near the fire pit. Without thinking, I pocketed it and ran to catch up. We set off, moving fast, retracing our steps in the fading light. The trail felt alien now, the trees looming closer, their branches clawing at the sky. I swore I heard rustling in the underbrush, always just out of sight. "Remember that symbol?" Tara panted as we pushed through a dense thicket. "There's another." She was right. An older version of the circle and slash mark scarred a massive pine, its edges weathered, moss creeping into the grooves. "Just a coincidence," I said, not believing it. "Keep moving." But the symbols multiplied, some fresh, others ancient, as if guiding us deeper into the dark. Our headlamps carved frail beams through the blackness. The forest now silent save for our ragged breaths and the crunch of leaves underfoot. Then we heard it, a low guttural moan, not animal, not human, echoing from all directions. Tara froze. "What was that?" I shook my head, my throat too tight to speak. Every instinct screamed to run, but blind panic would only trap us. We pressed on, quieter now. The moans growing closer. Twigs snapped behind us. Something stirred in the canopy above. Then just ahead, a flicker of motion. A tall, impossibly thin shape glided between two trees. In the brief sweep of my headlamp, I glimpsed pale, elongated limbs and a face that was less a face than a void. Pinpricks of light where eyes should be. "Run!" I yelled, all pretense of stealth shattered. We crashed through the undergrowth, branches tearing at our skin, roots snagging our boots. The sounds behind us swelled, shrill, inhuman cries that clawed at my sanity. I don't know how long we ran, time blurring into a haze of terror, but suddenly we burst onto a gravel road, a ranger station glowing like a beacon ahead. We staggered toward it, gasping, and I risked a glance back. There at the forest's edge stood a figure, tall, skeletal, its two long arms raised as if in farewell. For a heartbeat, I thought it would follow, but it melted into the trees, gone in an instant. The rangers were dubious, chalking our story up to fatigue or dehydration. They sent a team to the clearing, but found nothing. No tent, no gear, not even the fire pit. It was as if the campsite had never existed. Tara and I holed up in a nearby town, recovering, the silver pendant heavy in my pocket. When I finally opened it, I found a tiny photo. A family of four, smiling in a clearing that looked eerily like the one we'd found. I never reported it. Some truths invite more questions than answers. We never finished the trail. By unspoken agreement, we packed up and went home. Our adventure cut short. We don't speak of that night, but sometimes when the wind howls through the city, I think of that hollow in the Smokies, of the thing we saw, and I wonder, with a shiver that cuts to my core, if it's out there still, in the deepest reaches of the wild, watching, waiting, its eyes glinting in the dark, remembering the ones who got away. The scream that ripped through my rig's cab that night wasn't human. Not in any way I'd ever heard. It was a raw, primal howl, steeped in a terror so visceral it turned my veins to ice. It came from the man slumped in my passenger seat, a drifter I'd picked up barely an hour before. As his eyes snapped open, catching the dashboard's glow like a cornered beast, I knew with a sickening dread that whatever had jolted him from his sleep wasn't finished with him. Worse, it was here, in my truck, and the endless Wyoming night stretched before us like a trap. My name's Hank, and for nearly 20 years, I've hauled freight across the country's arteries, from coast to coast and everywhere between. I've seen plenty on these lonely roads, phantom lights dancing over swamps, storms that defy forecasts, even shapes in the sky that don't belong in any pilot's manual. But nothing, not a single eerie moment, prepared me for what unfolded on that starless stretch of I-80. It started as a routine run, Denver to Boise with a load of machine parts. Kind of job that pays the bills and keeps the wheels turning. The radio churned out twangy country hits, interspersed with late-night talk shows spinning tales of Bigfoot and government cover-ups. I was making good time, the miles slipping by under a moonless sky. About halfway through Wyoming, I saw him, a lone figure by the roadside, thumb out, his silhouette hunched against the biting wind. I don't usually stop for hitchhikers, too many stories of knives and scams. But something about this guy tugged at me. Maybe the slump of his shoulders, or the way he seemed to flicker in my headlights, like he was half there. Against my better judgment, I eased onto the shoulder. "Where you headed?" I called as he shuffled closer. "Anywhere but here," he rasped, voice barely carrying over the idling engine. That should have been my cue to peel out, but instead I said, "Hop in. I'm bound for Boise if that suits you." He climbed in, bringing a whiff of dust and something sharper, like burnt metal. Up close, he looked younger than I'd guessed, mid-20s, with unkempt hair and eyes that darted like a hunted animal's. "I'm Hank," I said, pulling back onto the highway. "Caleb," he muttered, staring out the window. "Thanks for this." We drove in silence. The only sounds the engine's rumble and the tires' steady hum. I tried small talk, where he was from, what brought him out here. But Caleb's answers were clipped, his gaze fixed on the dark. I gave up, letting the radio fill the void. An hour later, I noticed he dozed off, head lolling against the window. I turned the volume down, not wanting to wake him. That's when things took a turn. It started with a twitch, a jerk of his hand, like a reflex gone rogue. Then his breathing shifted, quick and shallow, his eyes flickering behind closed lids as if trapped in a fever dream. I was about to nudge him, worried he was having a seizure, when he started muttering, "No, please don't let it see me." The words were soft, laced with a fear so raw it raised the hairs on my neck. "Hey, man," I said, reaching for his shoulder. "Wake up, you're dreaming." But he didn't stir. His muttering grew louder, frantic. "It's coming. God, it's coming. Can't you feel it? Those eyes." His body thrashed, restrained only by the seatbelt. And then came that scream, a sound that nearly sent me swerving into the ditch. His eyes flew open, wild and unfocused, reflecting the dashboard's green glow like a wolf's. I yanked the truck onto the shoulder, my heart hammering. "Caleb, snap out of it." He turned to me, but his gaze seemed to pierce through, seeing something beyond the cab. "It's here," he whispered, voice raw. "It followed me, Hank. It's in the truck." A chill crawled up my spine. "What followed you?" "There's nothing here but us." He shook his head violent, like he could shake the truth away. "You can't see it, but it's here. Always here." His eyes darted around the cab, tracking an invisible presence. "We have to get out, now." Before I could stop him, he flung open the door and leapt into the night. I cursed, fumbling with my seatbelt and scrambling after him. The Wyoming cold hit like a slap, the silence absolute save for Caleb's ragged breaths. He stood a few feet from the truck, arms wrapped tight around himself, trembling. "Caleb," I said, approaching slow like you'd coax a spooked horse. "Talk to me. What's chasing you?" He looked at me, his face ghostly in the truck's high beams. "I don't know what it is," he said, voice breaking. "It's been after me for weeks, ever since I took that thing." My stomach twisted. "What thing?" With a shaking hand, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a small, dark object. Not a stone, but something carved, its surface etched with swirling symbols that seemed to writhe in the light. It pulsed faintly, as if alive. "Found it in the desert," he said, gesturing at the endless dark around us. "Some old ruin, half buried. Thought it was worth something." He laughed, a bitter sound. "Didn't know it'd wake it up." "Wake what?" I asked, dreading the answer. His eyes locked on mine, brimming with terror. "The thing that hunts in the dark, that lives in the cracks between what's real. It wants this back." He held up the artifact. "And it wants me for taking it." I wanted to call him crazy, to chalk it up to a bad trip or a broken mind, but the conviction in his voice, the way that carved thing seemed to hum in his hand, it stopped me cold. "Okay," I said, forcing calm. "So let's ditch it. Toss that thing into the ditch and be done." Caleb shook his head, frantic. "I've tried. It doesn't work. It's bound to me now. The only way out is to pass it on, to make someone else take it." The pieces clicked and my blood ran cold. "That's why you were out there hitching. You were looking for someone to dump it on." Tears streaked his face as he nodded. "I'm sorry, Hank. I didn't want to, but I can't take it anymore. The dreams, the shadows. It's tearing me apart." I took a step back, the isolation of the highway pressing in. Caleb, I can't. I won't take that thing. His face crumpled. Please, he begged, holding it out. Just take it. You'll see. You'll understand. For a moment, the artifact seemed to call to me, its symbols dancing, promising secrets. But I shook my head, breaking the spell. No, I said firmly. I won't do it, but I'll help you. We'll find a way to break this together. There's got to be someone who knows how to handle this thing. Caleb stared at me, his expression unreadable, then slowly nodded. Okay, he whispered. We'll try. We climbed back into the truck, the artifact wrapped in an old rag and stuffed in the glove box. As we pulled onto the highway, the night felt heavier, the shadows thicker. More than once, I thought I saw something in the corner of my eye. A tall, twisted shape loping just beyond the headlights. Gone when I looked. I dropped Caleb off in Cheyenne, where he said he'd tracked down a folklorist who might know how to banish the thing. I gave him my number, made him swear to call when he was free. That was 4 months ago. I haven't heard from him since. Sometimes on long hauls through the high plains, I scan the roadside, half expecting to see Caleb, thumb out, eyes hollow. And sometimes, in the gray haze between sleep and waking, I see shapes in my room. Tall, jagged, with too many limbs and eyes that burn. I tell myself it's just the echo of that night, my mind playing tricks. But deep down, I know better. Whatever hunted Caleb, whatever clung to that cursed artifact, it's still out there waiting. And on the darkest stretches of highway, when the world is nothing but asphalt and stars, I can't shake the feeling it's watching me. 2, the leather-bound diary slipped open in my hands, its brittle pages exhaling a cloud of mildew and time. At first, I thought it was just another relic of the orchard's long history, maybe a ledger of harvest totals or pruning schedules. But as my eyes traced the cramped, spidery script, my pulse quickened. Words like test subject and hybrid strain leapt from the page, and a creeping horror took hold. This wasn't a farmer's log. It was a record of something profane, and its discovery would plunge me into a nightmare that made me question the very soil beneath my feet. My name's Ellie, and I'd been working at Blackthorn Hollow Orchard for just 6 weeks when I found the diary. Fresh out of college with a degree in horticulture and a dream of running my own farm someday, I leapt at the chance to work as a hand for Mr. Carver, the orchard's gruff owner. The pay was modest, but the experience was gold, and there was a rugged charm to the sprawling property. Its ancient apple trees, weathered sheds, and the old farmhouse perched on a hill. Mr. Carver was a man of few words, stern but fair, living alone since his wife passed and his kids fled to the city. He didn't share much about the orchard's past, just handed me my tasks and left me to them. My days were filled with grafting branches, tending the small flock of goats and hauling compost. It was late June, the air thick with heat, when Mr. Carver asked me to clear out the old cider barn. Been putting it off too long, he muttered, scratching his beard. Sort what's worth keeping, burn the rest. The barn was a looming structure, its interior cool and dim, dust motes swirling in the slants of light piercing the cracked boards. The air carried the faint tang of fermented apples and something acrid, like old chemicals. I started in a corner, sorting through rusted tools, moldy burlap sacks, and splintered crates. It was tedious work, my mind drifting as I dragged junk to the burn pile outside. Then my boot caught on a loose floorboard, nearly sending me sprawling. Curious, I knelt to inspect it. The board lifted easily, revealing a shallow hollow beneath. Nestled inside, wrapped in faded canvas, was the diary. I glanced around, feeling a twinge of guilt, though Mr. Carver was off checking the trees. Reading someone's private thoughts felt like trespassing, but curiosity won out. As I turned the pages, curiosity curdled into dread. The diary belonged to Dr. Amos Carver, dated 1952. Mr. Carver's grandfather. But this was no orchard keeper's journal. It detailed experiments far beyond my training, attempts to engineer stronger, more resilient crops and livestock through genetic manipulation. Worse, it wasn't just plants and animals. There were chilling notes about human subjects, vague references to volunteers from a nearby sanatorium. My hands trembled as I read descriptions of failed trials, of things born neither fully human nor beast, accompanied by sketches that turned my stomach. Through it all ran Dr. Carver's fervor, his belief that he was on the cusp of a discovery that would redefine life itself. The final entry from 1961 was frantic, the handwriting erratic. It's done. The strain is stable, but at what price? They're out there in the woods, the hollows. I hear them at night, clawing at the edges. God forgive me for what I've unleashed. I snapped the diary shut, my heart pounding. This had to be fiction, the ravings of a broken mind. But as I sat there, memories of strange moments at the orchard surfaced. The eerie howls I dismissed as coyotes. The patches of land Mr. Carver warned me to avoid. The way the goats sometimes froze, staring into the trees. I shoved the diary back into its hiding place, needing air, needing to think. Stepping outside, I nearly collided with Mr. Carver. Making headway? He asked, eyeing the pile of debris. I nodded, my throat dry. Did he know about the diary? About his grandfather's madness? His gaze lingered, as if sensing my unease. You all right? Ellie, look like you've seen a ghost. Fine, I managed. Just hot in there. Needed a breather. He grunted, nodding. Don't overdo it. Come up to the house later. I'll whip up some supper. As he walked off, I wrestled with what I'd read. Was Mr. Carver hiding his family's dark past? Or was he as clueless as I'd been? That night in the small loft above the shed where I stayed, sleep eluded me. Every creak of the old building, every rustle in the orchard set my nerves alight. Then just past midnight, a sound yanked me upright. A guttural, throaty rasp, unlike any animal I knew. Heart racing, I crept to the window and peered into the dark. At first, nothing. Then movement, a shape, large and wrong, slinking through the trees beyond the barn. It paused, turning, and in the moonlight I glimpsed its face. Not human, not animal, but a grotesque in-between. I stumbled back, biting back a scream. It was real, whatever Dr. Carver had created. It was still here. I spent the night curled in bed, every sense strained, listening as the thing prowled outside. Dawn brought relief, the light banishing the worst of my fear. But the orchard felt different now, its beauty tainted. Over the next days, the oddities multiplied. Tools vanished, only to reappear in strange places. The goats grew skittish, especially at dusk, and more than once I caught Mr. Carver staring into the woods, his face etched with something like sorrow. I considered leaving, packing my bags and running from Blackthorn Hollow, but a stubborn part of me refused. Curiosity, or maybe a sense of duty. Whatever was out there, I couldn't just walk away. I began investigating discreetly at first. I reread the diary, noting Dr. Carver's methods, trying to grasp the science behind his horrors. I explored the orchard's fringes, areas Mr. Carver had forbidden, finding claw marks on trees and patches of trampled earth. Slowly, the truth took shape. The experiments hadn't ended with Dr. Carver. They'd been passed down, and Mr. Carver wasn't just aware. He was trying to undo his grandfather's sins. It all came crashing down one stormy night in early August. A shatter of glass and Mr. Carver's shouts woke me. I raced to the farmhouse, rain lashing my face to find the front door splintered, hanging limp. Inside was bedlam, furniture toppled, walls scored with deep gashes. In the living room stood Mr. Carver, facing a creature that defied reason. Part human, part beast. Its body a patchwork of sinew and fur, eyes glowing with a chilling intelligence. "Ellie!" Mr. Carver barked, spotting me. "The syringe on the mantel!" There it was, a glass vial filled with a shimmering green liquid. Without thinking, I grabbed it and tossed it to him. In one fluid motion, he caught it and drove it into the creature's flank. It let out a wail that shook the walls, thrashing wildly before collapsing, its form seeming to melt and shift. Within moments, it was no longer a monster but a man, unconscious, human, unmarred. Mr. Carver sank to his knees, exhaustion and relief carved into his face. "It's over," he whispered. "Finally over." In the days that followed, he told me everything. How his grandfather's experiments had birthed a handful of hybrid creatures, how they'd lurked in the woods for decades, emerging to haunt the orchard. He'd spent his life searching for a cure, a way to reverse the abomination. The man we'd saved was the last of them. With him restored, the nightmare ended. But the weight of Blackthorn Hollow lingers. I still work the orchard with Mr. Carver, though we never speak of that night to outsiders. Who would believe us? On quiet evenings, when the wind sighs through the apple trees, I scan the tree line, half expecting a shadow to stir. And I wonder if we truly found them all, or if something still waits, deep in the hollow biding its time. The first scratch on the cabin door came so softly, I might have mistaken it for the wind. But as the sound returned, deliberate, rhythmic, like claws testing the wood, my stomach twisted. My boyfriend, Owen, and I had come to this remote cabin in the Washington Cascades for a week of peace, a retreat from our overstressed lives. No Wi-Fi, no cell service, just the two of us in the wild. But as the scratching grew louder, joined by a low, guttural hum that wasn't quite a voice, I realized we'd found something far darker than solitude. Whatever was out there wasn't just curious, it was hungry. My name's Nora, and we'd been planning this getaway for months. Both of us were burned out, me from endless deadlines at the ad agency, Owen from his ER shifts. A rustic cabin nestled in a pine-choked valley seemed like the perfect antidote. We arrived late Friday, the dirt track to the property so rutted our SUV groaned in protest. The cabin was as promised, a cozy log structure with a stone fireplace, surrounded by towering evergreens that swallowed the sky. The nearest town was 30 miles away, and the isolation felt like a balm as we stepped out, breathing air sharp with resin and earth. The cabin's owner, a grizzled man named Amos, met us with the keys. As he walked us through the place, showing us the wood stove, the creaky loft bed, his eyes kept flicking to the windows, never settling. "Few things to know," he said, standing on the porch. "Don't wander the woods after dark. Easy to get lost, and there's bears out there. If you hear odd noises at night, just let them be. Likely just deer. Oh, and one more thing." His voice dropped, urgent. "Keep the doors and windows shut tight after sunset. No matter what you hear. Clear?" Before we could press him, he was off, his truck kicking up gravel as he sped away. Owen and I shared a look. "Bit dramatic," I said, forcing a laugh. "Probably just spooking the city slickers," Owen replied, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. We brushed it off, unpacking and settling in. The day was idyllic. We hiked a trail to a hidden waterfall, grilled steaks on the fire, and spent the evening on the porch, wrapped in a blanket under a sky blazing with stars. It wasn't until we were climbing into bed that I noticed the marks, deep, jagged scratches on the inside of the door frame and windowsills, like something had clawed its way toward entry. "Owen, check this out," I called, tracing the gouges. He frowned, running a finger over them. Maybe a raccoon got stuck inside, but the marks were too deep, too intentional. We joked about demon squirrels to lighten the mood, but as we turned out the lantern, the cabin's charm felt thinner. the darkness beyond the walls heavier. The scratching started that first night, faint at first like branches brushing the cabin. I lay rigid, straining to hear over Owen's steady breathing. Scratch, scratch. Pause, scratch, scratch. Then a tapping at the window, sharp and deliberate, like a nail probing the glass. My heart thudded. "Owen," I whispered, shaking him. "Do you hear that?" He stirred, eyes bleary. "Yeah," he murmured, sitting up. We clung to each other, barely breathing, as the tapping circled the cabin, window to window, relentless. After what felt like hours, it stopped, and we drifted into a fitful sleep as dawn crept in. The next morning, we tried to rationalize it. "Probably an owl," Owen said over coffee, "or wind in the pines." I nodded, wanting to believe him, but the daylight didn't erase the unease. We spent the day exploring, swimming in an icy creek, napping in a meadow, the sun chasing away the night's shadows. But as evening fell and we returned to the cabin, dread crept back. We checked the locks twice, drew the heavy curtains, and tried to lose ourselves in a deck of cards and a bottle of wine. The scratching returned earlier that night, bolder, joined by that guttural hum, almost words but not quite, like a mockery of speech. "Nora," Owen whispered, his face drained in the lamplight. "That's no animal." I wanted to argue, to cling to reason, but as the hum grew, forming sounds that teased at meaning, I couldn't deny it. We huddled on the bed, watching the sliver of shadow beneath the door, listening as whatever was outside circled, its claws scraping with purpose. At one point, something heavy slammed against the door, rattling the frame. I stifled a scream. Owen gripped my hand. "The car," he whispered. We could make a run for it, but the keys were in the kitchen, and the thought of opening the door felt like suicide. So we waited, the night stretching into an eternity of fear. Just before dawn, when despair clung thickest, a new sound broke the tension. Footsteps on the porch, then a knock, unmistakably human. "Anyone in there?" a rough voice called. Peering through the peephole, I saw Amos, his flashlight cutting the gloom. Relief flooded me as I flung open the door. "Amos, thank God, there's something out here." He pushed past us, scanning the cabin. "I know," he said grimly. "That's why I came. You two all right?" We nodded, shaken but unharmed. Amos checked the windows and doors, his face set. When he was satisfied, he turned to us, his expression heavy. "I owe you an apology. Should have told you the truth when you arrived. But I needed the booking. Money's tight." "Told us what?" I demanded, anger flaring. "What's out there?" Amos sighed, looking older than his years. "This land's wrong, always has been. Things live in these woods, things that ain't natural. Usually they keep to themselves, but new folks, fresh blood, it draws them out." A chill ran through me. "What things?" He shook his head. "Never seen 'em clear, but I've heard 'em, felt 'em watching. They're clever, whatever they are, and they're always hungry." "Why stay?" Owen asked, voice tight. Amos's eyes darkened. "This land's my family's, going back generations. And truth be told, I don't think they'd let me leave." We spent the rest of the night in the living room, Amos recounting tales passed down through his kin, stories of vanishings, of nights when the veil between worlds thinned. As the sun rose, painting the pines gold, he stood. "They're gone now. Can't stand the light. Pack up and go. I'll refund your money." We didn't argue. Within an hour, we were in the SUV, the cabin shrinking in the rear view as we sped down the mountain. We've barely spoken of that weekend since. How do you explain the inexplicable? Back in the city, we buried the memory, focusing on our safe, predictable lives. But sometimes when the wind howls just right, I hear that scratching in my dreams. That almost voice whispering words I pray I never understand. I don't know what dwells in those woods, what wanted us, or what it might have done if it breached the cabin's walls. But I know this. There are places where reality frays, where things older than time lurk just beyond sight. If you find yourself in a lonely cabin, far from help, and hear claws at the door or a tap at the glass, heed my warning. Keep the locks tight, the curtains drawn, and don't answer. No matter what you hear. Because once you acknowledge the things in the dark, once you let them know you're listening, they'll never stop calling. And sooner or later, you might open the door. The voice crackled through my CB radio, jagged with panic and static, slicing through the hum of my rig's engine. Please, someone. I need help. I'm at the old Sunset Depot on 66. Something's here. Oh God, it's coming closer. Hurry. Then silence, the kind that swallows sound and hope alike. My hands tightened on the wheel, knuckles bleaching as I stared into the Oklahoma night, the highway unspooling like a black thread under my headlights. Reason told me to keep driving, to let it be someone else's problem. But 25 years hauling freight taught me one truth. Out here, in the vast dark of America's back roads, a trucker's often the only lifeline between a stranger and oblivion. With a muttered oath, I flicked on my blinker and took the next exit. I didn't know it then, but that choice would drag me into a horror I'm still trying to unsee. My name's Ray Thornton, and I've been driving big rigs since I could sign my name on a CDL. I've seen my share of the road's strangeness, will-o-wisps over marshes, hitchhikers who vanish by dawn, even lights in the sky that move too fast for planes. But nothing matched what I found at the Sunset Depot that night. It was a standard run, Chicago to Phoenix with a load of auto parts, the kind of job that keeps the bills paid and the coffee strong. I was cruising through Oklahoma, the radio spitting out old rock anthems and trucker chatter, when that desperate call broke through. At first, I thought it was a prank. Kids messing with the channel, not uncommon on lonely stretches. But the raw fear in that voice, the way it cracked on its coming closer, hit like a gut punch. I tried to reply, to get a name or details, but the line stayed dead, just a hiss of static. I knew the Sunset Depot. Back in its heyday, it was a bustling stop on Route 66. Neon lit and packed with rigs and road trippers. But the interstate bypassed it decades ago, leaving it a crumbling husk, its pumps dry and its diner boarded up. Now it was just a ghost, sinking into the prairie. As I took the exit, a cold knot formed in my gut. What if this was a setup? I'd heard stories of truckers lured off the road by fake distress calls, robbed or worse. But that voice echoed in my head, too real to ignore. The access road was a pitted mess, weeds choking the cracked asphalt. My headlights swept over sagebrush and rusted signs, catching the depot's silhouette rising from the dark like a forgotten tomb. The old sign hung crooked, its neon tubes shattered, and the main building sagged under a caved-in roof. The lot, once alive with chrome and chatter, was empty save for dust and memories. I pulled up to the diner's entrance, leaving my engine idling. The silence was thick, broken only by the tick of my cooling rig and the faint moan of wind through broken windows. "Hello," I called, my voice sounding small in the vast night. "Anyone out here?" Heard your call on the CB. No reply, not even a cricket's chirp. I grabbed my flashlight from the cab and stepped out, the gravel crunching under my boots. Every instinct screamed to get back in the truck, but I couldn't shake the thought of someone hurt, alone, waiting for help. The diner's front door was ajar, boards pried loose, revealing a black maw that drank my flashlight's beam. I pushed inside, the air heavy with mold and decay. The beam revealed chaos, overturned booths, shattered dishes, a jukebox tipped on its side, its glass cracked. It looked like the place had been gutted by time and scavengers. "Anyone in here?" I called again, my voice echoing. A faint scrape answered from the back, like something heavy dragging across tile. My pulse quickened. You okay back there? I moved toward the sound, stepping into what was once the kitchen. My flashlight caught something that froze my blood. A CB radio, pristine and out of place, perched on a rusted stove. Its power light glowed faintly, impossible in this dead place. Around it, etched into the grimy floor, were strange, looping symbols drawn in what looked like dried blood, dark and flaking. I took a step back, the silence now oppressive, as if the air itself was holding its breath. Then I heard it, a low guttural rasp, not quite a voice coming from behind me. The hairs on my neck stood rigid as I turned, slow, dreading what I'd see. There in the doorway was something. For a fleeting moment, my mind scrambled to make sense of it. Human shaped but wrong, too tall, too thin, its limbs bent like snapped branches. Its face was a blank stretch of pale flesh, split by a mouth that gaped too wide, bristling with needle-like teeth. My body locked, fear rooting me to the spot as the thing unfolded. Growing taller, its form flowing like ink and water. It reached for me with claw-like hands and my vision blurred. Consciousness slipping like sand through my fingers. The last thing I heard was the CB sparking to life. That same panicked voice pleading for help. I woke in my truck, parked on the highway's shoulder, the dawn painting the sky in streaks of fire. For a moment I thought it was a nightmare, but the dust caking my clothes, the scratches on my arms, and the CB radio, impossibly there on my passenger seat, told a different story. My logbook showed a 6-hour gap, a void I couldn't fill. I drove to the nearest town, checked into a motel, and tried to piece it together. Had I seen what I thought, or had my mind conjured a monster to explain the lost time? I considered the police, but what could I say? That I'd been lured to a derelict depot by a ghost on the radio, then attacked by something not of this world? They'd lock me up or laugh me out. So I did what I knew, finished the run, kept my mouth shut, and tried to bury it. But the road changed after that night. Shadows made me jump. Every CB crackle set my teeth on edge. I started taking longer routes to avoid empty stretches, even if it cost me time. That radio, I couldn't touch it, couldn't toss it. It's locked in a storage unit now, wrapped in a tarp. But some nights I swear I hear it calling, that voice begging for rescue. I dug into the Sunset Depot's history later, finding whispers among truckers and locals, tales of drivers who stopped there and vanished, of an ancient mound nearby said to be a gateway to somewhere else. Some called it cursed, others something older, hungrier. I don't know what I met that night, what it wanted, or why it let me go. But it's out there, waiting at the edges of forgotten roads and the husks of places time left behind. I still drive, but never after dark if I can help it, and I keep my CB off, no matter how quiet the miles get. If you're out on Route 66 and hear a voice on the radio, desperate and alone, think hard before you answer. Sometimes the call isn't from someone in trouble, it's the trouble itself, and once you stop, you might never drive away. The first thing I noticed that morning was the stillness. No sparrows chattered, no wind stirred the rye field, not even the distant bark of my neighbor's dog broke the silence. It was a quiet so deep it felt like the world was holding its breath. Then I saw it, a vast, intricate design etched into my rye field. The stalks twisted and braided with a precision that defied nature. As the rising sun cast long shadows across the pattern, I knew my life had shifted irrevocably. What I didn't yet grasp was how far the truth would pull me, or how perilous its pursuit would become. My name's Amos Hale, and I've worked this land in eastern Montana for over 30 years, a legacy passed down through 4 generations since my great-grandfather first tilled the soil. I've weathered blizzards, locusts, and market crashes, but nothing prepared me for what unfolded that summer. It began subtly. A few of my cattle broke a fence one night, stampeding through the south pasture, unusual but not alarming. Then my combine started glitching, its sensors fritzing for no reason. Annoying but fixable. But the lights, those were something else. I first saw them a week before the pattern appeared. I was up late balancing the books in my study when a flicker outside caught my eye. At first I thought it was a car on the county road, but my farm's a good 10 miles from the nearest neighbor. Stepping onto the porch, I saw them, 3 pulsing orbs, hovering silent over my rye field. They glowed with a strange liquid light, casting eerie shapes across the swaying stalks. I stood frozen, watching as they hung there, then shot upward, vanishing into the star-streaked sky. I told myself it was a trick of exhaustion, maybe a dream bleeding into waking. But deep down, I knew I'd seen something real. The next nights, I kept vigil, but the lights didn't return. Just as I started to doubt myself, I woke to the pattern. It was immense, spanning half my 200-acre field, a labyrinth of spirals and arcs that seemed to pulse with intent. The rye wasn't cut or broken, but woven, each stalk bent into place with impossible care. I called the sheriff, more out of duty than expectation. Jim's been a friend since grade school, but I saw the disbelief in his eyes as he surveyed the field. Could be kid, he offered, sounding unconvinced. You know how they get, looking for kicks. I shook my head. Jim, this would have taken hours, a whole crew. And look, no tracks, no footprints, nothing. He had no answer, just a shrug. Word spread fast in our small town. By midday, my driveway was clogged with gawkers, UFO chasers, and a news van from Billings. I tried to keep them out, but it was like damming a river. That's when the strangeness deepened. It started with the animals. My collies, usually eager for strangers, turned feral near the pattern, snarling and snapping. The cattle shunned that field, huddling at the far end of their pasture, lowing uneasily into the night. Then the equipment failures escalated. My phone died despite a full charge. The radio spat static laced with faint, garbled voices in no language I knew. And the dreams. God, the dreams. Every night I wandered that rye field, the stalks whispering in a chorus just beyond comprehension. Something waited ahead, always out of sight, and I'd wait gasping, mouth tasting of copper, teetering on the edge of some vast revelation. A week after the pattern appeared, a stranger came to the farm. She introduced herself as Dr. Lena Voss, an astrophysicist from the university in Bozeman. Unlike the thrill seekers, she was calm, her eyes sharp with purpose. Mr. Hale, she said, studying the pattern, have you noticed anything else since this showed up? Lights in the sky? Electrical issues? Her words sent a shiver through me. How'd you know? She met my gaze, her expression grave. Because this isn't the first, there's a pattern to these events, Mr. Hale, and it's growing. Over coffee in my kitchen, she laid it out. Similar designs appearing across the Midwest, each tied to sightings of strange lights and vanishings. We think these are markers, she said, voice low. Tests, maybe, by something not from here, and the people closest to them, they change. Report visions, compulsions, messages from something. What do they want? I asked, my throat dry. She shook her head. We don't know, but you're at risk, Mr. Hale. These sights affect those nearest them. We've seen people act strangely, claim they're being called. Her words struck deep. I thought of my dreams, the whispers urging me toward the field's heart. What do I do? I asked. Let us monitor the site, she said. Set up equipment. And whatever you do, stay out of that field no matter what you feel or hear. Promise me. I promised. But promises are fragile when the world itself seems to bend around you. The next days were a blur. Voss and her team erected sensors and cameras around the pattern, collecting soil samples and muttering in hushed, worried tones. The whispers, Zhou Yan in my dreams, grew louder, more insistent, and I woke with strange glyphs burning in my mind, my fingers twitching to sketch them. The urge to walk into the field, to stand at its center, became a physical ache, a pull I fought with every ounce of will. It all broke open on the 8th night. I jolted awake to a sound like nothing I'd known, a deep, resonant hum that vibrated in my bones, coming from everywhere and nowhere. I stumbled to the window and froze. The pattern was glowing, a soft, silvery light pulsing in time with the hum. Above it, the lights I'd seen before hovered, descending slowly. I don't recall choosing to move. One moment I was at the window, the next I was outside, barefoot in my pajamas, running toward the field, drawn by a force I couldn't name. Voss's warning echoed, faint and distant, but the call of the pattern drowned it out. I was steps from the field's edge when a hand seized my arm, yanking me back. "Amos, no!" Voss shouted, her face pale in the unearthly glow. "You go in there. We lose you." I struggled, the whispers in my head a deafening roar, but she held fast, her grip an anchor. Slowly the compulsion ebbed, leaving me trembling. We stood transfixed as the light sank into the pattern's heart. A blinding flash erupted, searing my vision, and then nothing. The lights were gone, the hum silenced, the field dark and still. Days later, government agents swarmed the farm, digging up the pattern, testing every clod of earth. I was questioned endlessly, as was Voss's team. They found nothing. No radiation, no anomalies, just ordinary soil. The official line was a hoax, despite zero evidence of human hands. But I know what I saw, what I felt. It's been 6 years since that night. I still farm the land, but the rye won't grow in that field, no matter what I sow. On quiet nights, I sometimes hear those whispers, faint at the edge of my mind. When I look at the stars, I feel eyes looking back, ancient and unblinking. I don't know what would have happened if I'd reached the pattern's center, what waits out there, or when it might return. But I know we're not alone, and the universe is stranger, more terrifying than we dare imagine. If you find a pattern in your fields or see lights dancing where they shouldn't, remember my story. And when they call, don't answer. Because once you do, there's no turning back. The thermos of coffee was still steaming. That's what stopped me cold. Not the oppressive hush, not the abandoned vehicles, not even the fresh skid marks vanishing into nowhere. It was that thermos, tossed in a trash bin, its contents hot enough to curl vapor into the chilly desert air. Proof someone had been here moments ago. Yet the Coyote Rest Stop, a lonely oasis off a New Mexico highway, was deserted. As I stood there, a prickle of unease crawling up my spine, I caught a flicker of movement at the edge of the scrubland. A figure watched, half hidden by mesquite, and in that instant, I knew I'd stumbled into something I wasn't meant to see, something I might not walk away from. My name's Casey, and I've been a long-haul trucker for nearly 12 years, crisscrossing the country with loads of everything from lumber to frozen beef. The road's my home, its quirks and ghosts as familiar as my own reflection. I've seen oddities, lights trailing my rig too closely, towns missing from any map, whispers on the CB that fade to static, but nothing prepared me for what I encountered that night at Coyote Rest. It was a routine haul, Dallas to Tucson with a trailer of electronics, pushing hard to make up for a delay in Abilene. The night was moonless, the highway a dark vein through the desert, and I was fighting a yawn when the rest stop sign loomed ahead. A quick break, I told myself. Coffee, a stretch, and I'd be good for the next leg. Coyote Rest was an older stop, a low-slung building with restrooms and vending machines, a separate lot for rigs. As I pulled in, I noted a handful of cars parked haphazardly, but no people in sight. I eased into the truck lot and stepped out, the desert chill biting through my jacket. The silence was unnatural. No hum of insects, no distant rumble of traffic, just my boots crunching on gravel. That should have been my first warning. I headed to the building, the door creaking as I pushed it open. Inside, fluorescent lights buzzed, casting a sterile glow over an empty lobby. I hit the restroom, splashing cold water on my face, the mirror reflecting my road-weary eyes. As I turned to leave, a shadow flitted in the reflection, human shape, slipping past the half-open door. I spun, heart lurching, but the hallway was empty. "Hello?" I called, my voice thin, nervous. Nothing. Shaking it off as a trick of fatigue, I moved to the vending machines, fishing for change. That's when I noticed the oddities. A denim jacket slung over a chair, as if its owner had just stepped away. A phone on a table, screen still lit with a text half-typed. And in the trash by the door, that steaming thermos. My skin prickled. Where was everyone? I stepped outside, scanning the lot. The cars were still there, some with doors ajar, engines ticking as they cooled. "Hey!" I shouted, my voice swallowed by the vastness. "Anyone out here?" The silence pressed heavier. Then I saw the skid marks, fresh, sharp, leading from a parking spot to the lot's edge, where they stopped, as if the car had evaporated. My pulse raced, adrenaline burning away the fog of exhaustion. Something was deeply wrong. I turned, intending to sprint back to my rig and get the hell out, when I saw it. The figure at the scrubland's edge. It was humanoid but off. Too tall. Its proportions stretched like a shadow cast wrong. It stood motionless, half shrouded by thorns, watching me. I froze, caught in its gaze. A deer before a coyote. For a long moment, neither of us moved. Then slowly, it lifted a hand, beckoning with fingers too long, too jointed. Terror jolted through me, raw and electric. I ran, legs pumping, keys jangling as I fumbled them from my pocket. I dropped them in the gravel, swearing as I scrabbled to retrieve them. As I hauled myself into the cab, I risked a glance back. The figure was closer, no longer hiding, its form clear in the rest stop's sodium lights. Its skin was nearly translucent, stretched taut over a skeletal frame. Its face, its face, was a smooth expanse, save for deep-set eyes that glinted like wet stones and a mouth splitting ear to ear, bristling with jagged teeth. I jammed the key into the ignition, the engine roaring as I threw the truck into gear. Movement flashed in my peripheral, more figures, dozens emerging from the scrub, all with that same unnatural grace flowing like smoke across the lot. I floored it, tires spinning before catching, the rig lurching out of coyote rest like a beast unleashed. I drove for hours, well past my legal hours, not stopping until the sun blazed high and I was deep into Arizona. Even then, I couldn't shake the sense of being watched. My mirrors showed only empty road, but the memory of that beckoning hand burned in my mind. I thought about reporting it, calling the state police, spilling the whole insane story. But who'd believe me? I'd sound like a drunk raving about desert monsters. So I kept quiet, finished the run, and tried to convince myself it was a hallucination, a trick of a tired mind. But I couldn't forget, couldn't stop wondering about the people at that rest stop, the ones who'd left their cars, their phones, their steaming coffee. Had they followed that gesture into the scrub? What became of them? In the weeks that followed, I poked around, asking questions on trucker forums, digging through old news clippings. I found whispers, stories of rest stops along Route 40 where people vanished, of figures seen at the desert's edge, always at night, always beckoning. Some called them spirits, others aliens. A few muttered about things older than the land itself, waking in the modern age. I don't know what they are, what they want, or why I was spared. But they're out there, lurking where the road grows lonely in the shadows of places travelers pass through. I still drive, but I avoid rest stops now, pushing from town to town without pause. I don't stop for solitary figures on the roadside, no matter how lost they look. On long hauls, when the night is thick and the highway stretches endless, I sometimes think I see them in my mirrors. Tall, thin shapes keeping pace with my rig, watching, waiting. I wonder if I truly escaped that night, or if I'm still caught in some liminal space, driving a road that's not quite real. If you're out late and see a rest stop glowing in the desert, check your fuel, your stamina, your nerve. Ask yourself if it's worth the risk. Because some stops aren't for resting. They're doorways to places we were never meant to tread. And once you step through, there's no road back. The first photo was just trees, towering redwoods draped in mist, their branches a cathedral of green. The second caught a smudge of motion at the frame's edge, barely noticeable. But the third froze my blood. There, stepping from the shadows between two ancient trunks, was a figure, human-like but wrong, its limbs too long, its form too gaunt, as if stretched by some cruel hand. It faced the camera, its eyes two glinting voids that seemed to bore through the lens, straight into me. My hands shook as I lowered the viewfinder, my gaze darting to the thickening dusk around my campsite. Night was falling in the Humboldt redwoods, and I was no longer alone. My name's Lena Wu, and for a decade, I've chased the perfect shot as a nature photographer, trekking through jungles, scaling cliffs, and wading swamps to capture the wild's raw beauty. But nothing in my years of roaming prepared me for what I found in the depths of Northern California's redwood forest. It was meant to be a straightforward gig, a solo 10-day expedition to photograph the old-growth giants for an environmental journal. I'd done countless trips like this, relishing the solitude, the chance to lose myself in nature's pulse. But this forest held something older, something that watched. The first days were a photographer's dream. The redwoods soared, their canopies filtering light into golden shafts, moss and ferns carpeting the earth. I set up camp in a small clearing by a burbling creek, venturing out daily to shoot. Dew-kissed spider webs, elk grazing in glades, the play of fog through ancient boughs. On the fifth night, as I reviewed my day's work by lantern light, I noticed something odd in one frame. In the background, half hidden by a tree, was a shape, vague, upright, blending into the shadows. I dismissed it as a trick of light, maybe a sapling bent by wind, but a nagging unease took root. The next day I returned to the spot, curious to debunk my nerves. I rigged a motion-activated trail camera, the kind used for elusive wildlife, and left it to watch while I explored elsewhere. When I retrieved it that evening, my heart lurched. The camera had snapped dozens of images in quick succession. The first few showed only the forest floor, a squirrel, a falling leaf. Then the figure appeared, tall and impossibly thin, its limbs bending at angles that defied bone. Its skin was pale, almost luminous, stretched tight over a frame that seemed to flicker at the edges. Its face was a smooth mask, broken only by two large, reflective eyes that caught the camera's flash like a predator's. In each shot, it drew closer until the final image showed a long, claw-like hand reaching for the lens. I stared at the screen, my mind rebelling. This couldn't be real. A prank, maybe. Some local in a costume. But the photos told a different story, and the forest silence felt heavier now, watching. I bolted back to camp, the trail camera clutched tight, and barely slept, jumping at every snap of a twig, every rustle in the undergrowth. I told myself it was nonsense, that there was a logical explanation, but the images burned behind my eyes. Morning brought no relief. My campsite was in disarray. My pack unzipped, gear scattered, my food cache hung high to deter bears, torn down, the rope shredded. In the soft earth near my tent was a footprint, long, narrow, with toes that curled like talons. My breath hitched. I checked my main camera, dreading what I'd find. New photos had been taken while I slept. Images of my tent, of me inside visible through the mesh flap, unaware. In each, the figure loomed, closer with every frame, its blank face tilted as if studying me. I should have packed up then, assignment be damned, and hiked out. But a reckless mix of defiance and obsession held me fast. If I could capture a clearer shot, prove what I'd seen, it might make sense. So I stayed, setting more trail cameras around camp, spending nights clutching my knife, ears straining for any sound. During the day, I followed signs of the thing. Broken ferns, claw marks on bark, a tuft of coarse, gray hair snagged on a thorn, unlike any creature I knew. The forest, once a sanctuary, turned menacing, its shadows alive with unseen eyes. As days bled into nights, I felt my grip on reality slipping. The redwoods loomed like sentinels, their roots clawing the earth. I couldn't shake the sense of being hunted even in sunlight. Yet I pushed on, driven by a need to document the impossible. It came to a head on what should have been my final night. I'd planned to leave at dawn, my assignment done, my sanity fraying. I'd set my cameras for one last vigil, hoping for that definitive shot to silence my doubts. I must have dozed off, exhaustion overtaking fear, because I woke to absolute silence. The forest's nighttime chorus of owls and crickets gone. Something was outside my tent. I heard it, soft, deliberate steps circling, a faint sniff like a beast scenting prey. I lay paralyzed, knife useless in my grip, as the tent's zipper began to slide, inch by agonizing inch. The flap parted, and a pale, multi-jointed hand slipped through, its fingers curling toward my camera, left beside my sleeping bag. Survival instinct snapped me free. I lunged, snatching the camera and kicking through the tent's side, tearing the fabric as I tumbled into the night. I ran blindly, branches whipping my face, roots tripping my feet. The camera clutched to my chest. Behind me, it pursued, not running but gliding, a swift, fluid shadow weaving through the trees. Its presence was a weight, a hum in the air that pressed against my skull. I don't know how long I fled, lungs burning, legs screaming, but at last I saw lights. A ranger station at the trailhead, its windows a beacon of safety. I burst from the trees, sobbing, and pounded on the door. The ranger, startled, took one look at my torn clothes and wild eyes and pulled me inside, locking the door. The rest of that night is a haze. I babbled my story, the ranger's skepticism softening to concern as he saw my raw terror. Police arrived taking my statement, and when they asked for my camera, I handed it over, hands trembling. But the photos, the dozens of images I'd captured of that thing, were gone. Every frame showed only trees, mist, the ordinary forest. Even the shots from that final night of the hand breaching my tent had vanished. Only one image remained, the last on the card, a blurry shot of the woods. And there, faint in the background, a tall, thin shape half hidden by a redwood, its head tilted as if smiling. I never returned to those woods. I told my editor a sanitized version, spooked by wildlife, equipment lost, and submitted safe, scenic photos that hid the truth. But some nights, when the city's hum fades and the wind sighs through my window, I hear the forest silence again. I think of the thing in the redwoods, its eyes like black mirrors, and I wonder if it's still out there, waiting for the next soul to wander too deep. If you're in the wild, framing that perfect shot of untouched beauty, watch the shadows between the trees. If something moves there, something that doesn't belong, don't try to capture it. Just run and don't look back. because some things aren't meant to be photographed. And once they see you seeing them, they never forget. They never stop watching. The first time I saw her, I thought I'd caught my own reflection in a glass door. Same auburn hair cropped at the chin, same hazel eyes, even the same faint scar curving above my right eyebrow from a biking mishap at 10. But this was no mirror. She was a living woman, standing across the crowded atrium of the Horizon's crest, a luxury cruise ship gliding through the Bahamas. Our eyes locked, and a shiver ran through me as she raised a hand in a casual wave, her smile a perfect echo of my own. In that moment, I knew my idyllic vacation had veered into something uncharted, and the warm Caribbean breeze carried a chill I couldn't shake. My name's Claire Donovan, and I'm a 34-year-old data analyst from Portland. This cruise was my first real break in years, a 10-day escape from spreadsheets and burnout. I'd been savoring every moment, lazing by the pool, sipping mango daiquiris, even flirting with a charming lawyer named Ryan who was traveling with friends. The ship was a floating paradise, all gleaming decks and endless buffets, and I felt lighter than I had in ages. That changed on the fifth night. During the captain's gala when I saw her, I dressed up, slipping into an emerald green gown I'd splurged on for the trip. Pausing to adjust my earrings in a mirrored panel by the atrium, I caught her reflection, or so I thought. But as I turned, she was there, a separate person, her features an uncanny match for mine, down to the way her lips quirked. She stood near a fountain, surrounded by chattering guests, yet somehow apart. When our gazes met, the din of the crowd faded, and her wave felt like a signal, intimate and knowing. I froze, my mind scrambling. Was this a prank? A long-lost twin? Before I could move, a waiter jostled me, and when I looked again, she was gone, swallowed by the sea of sequins and tuxedos. At dinner, I couldn't focus, my eyes scanning the ballroom for her. I glimpsed her once, seated at a far table, but a blink later, the chair was empty. Ryan noticed my distraction. "Claire, you okay? You look spooked." I forced a smile. "Just tired, too much sun maybe." But the unease clung like damp cloth. Who was she, and why did she wear my face? The next morning I set out to find her. I roamed the ship's labyrinthine decks, checking lounges, cafes, even the gym. No sign. It wasn't until late afternoon, as I headed to my cabin to change for a show, that I saw her again. A flash of auburn hair rounding a corridor's end. I broke into a run, my sandals slapping the polished floor. But when I turned the corner, the hallway was empty, the air still. That night, sleep wouldn't come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her smile, my smile, watching me. At 3 a.m., I gave up, pulling on a sweater and heading to the upper deck to clear my head. The ship was hushed, the ocean a dark mirror under a sickle moon. I leaned on the railing, the waves' rhythm steadying my nerves. Footsteps sounded behind me, soft but distinct. I turned, expecting a night owl passenger, but it was Ryan, his brow creased with concern. "Claire, what are you doing up?" I hesitated, then spilled it all, seeing my double chasing her. The gnawing sense of wrongness. "It sounds crazy, I know," I finished, bracing for skepticism. He frowned, thoughtful. "That's wild. But I've heard weirder stories on ships. Maybe stress is messing with you, or maybe she's just a doppelganger. Let's look into it tomorrow. Ask around, check the passenger list. Someone else must have noticed her, right?" His pragmatism was a lifeline, and I clung to it. We agreed to meet for breakfast and investigate, and I returned to my cabin feeling a fraction less unmoored. But the dreams that night were relentless. Corridors of mirrors, each reflecting a slightly altered Claire, her eyes too large, her smile too sharp. I woke drenched in sweat, the cabin's shadows pressing close. The next days were a haze of paranoia. Brian and I questioned bartenders, Deckhands, even a security guard we bribed to skim camera footage. Nothing. No one recalled a woman matching my description, and the footage showed only me, alone, where I'd sworn she'd been. Passengers started whispering, giving me sidelong glances. Twice strangers approached, insisting they'd just seen me elsewhere on the ship, in the spa, at the casino, places I hadn't been. Ryan stayed loyal, but I sensed his doubt growing. Maybe it's just someone who looks similar, he suggested one afternoon by the pool. You're seeing what you're expecting now. I wanted to believe him, to blame sunstroke or imagination, but I knew what I'd seen. Something was happening on the ship, something that wore my face. It all collided on the ninth night. I was walking back from a late jazz set when I saw her again, standing at the end of a quiet corridor, her gaze fixed on me. This time I wouldn't let her slip away. "Hey!" I shouted, sprinting toward her. "Who are you? Why do you look like me?" She turned and ran, her footsteps silent, and I gave chase, weaving through stairwells and lounges, the ship a maze of glass and chrome. I cornered her in a dead-end hallway near the crew quarters, her back to me, shoulders rising and falling as if she'd run too. "Please," I gasped, out of breath. "Just tell me who you are." Slowly, she faced me and the world tilted. Her face was mine, but wrong. Eyes too wide, mouth stretching unnaturally, her features rippling like a disturbed pond. "Who am I?" she said, her voice a warped mimicry of my own. "I'm you, Claire. Or rather, I'm what you could be. What you might choose." She stepped closer, and I backed into the wall, my heart hammering. "What are you?" I whispered. Her smile widened. Impossible, showing too many teeth. "I'm a possibility, a thread in the tapestry. This ship sails where worlds brush close, where selves converge. I'm here to offer you a choice." Behind her, the hallways shimmered, a haze revealing glimpses of other places. Cities of light, forests of crystal, skies with too many stars. "Stay in your small, safe life," she continued, "or come with me. See what you could become." Her hand extended, fingers beckoning. For a heartbeat, I was tempted. The allure of the unknown, of a self unbound by routine, tugged at me. But I thought of my life, my quirky apartment, my sister's laugh, Ryan's steady presence. "No," I said, voice firm. "This is my world. I choose it." Her face twisted, less human by the second, a snarl of rage. "You'll regret this," she hissed. Lunging, I braced, eyes shut, but no impact came. Instead, a rush of air, a sensation of falling, and silence. When I opened my eyes, I was in my cabin, morning light streaming through the porthole, the ship's hum mingling with passenger chatter outside. For a moment, I thought it was a dream, but on my nightstand sat a small, silver compass, its needle spinning wildly. Something I'd never owned but felt eerily familiar. I picked it up, and in the mirror my reflection flickered. Just for a second, her smile too wide, too knowing. The cruise ended without further sightings of my double. Ryan and I grew closer, planning to meet up back on land, and I buried the incident, blaming stress and sea air. But that compass sits on my dresser, and late at night, I study it, wondering about the paths I didn't take, the other Claires in other worlds. Sometimes I feel her watching, a shadow just beyond my mirror. If you're on a cruise and see someone wearing your face, think twice before you follow. They might be more than a reflection. They might be a glimpse of what you could become, for better or for worse. The warning came in a hoarse whisper, so laced with dread it froze the fork halfway to my mouth. "Whatever you do, get out before midnight," the grizzled trucker muttered, his eyes darting to the diner's clock before he hurried out. I sat there, half-eaten meatloaf cooling on my plate, glancing at my watch. 11:39 p.m. The other patrons' faces were taut, their glances furtive, the air thick with unspoken tension. As I scanned the chrome and neon interior of Rosie's diner, a sinking realization hit. This wasn't just a late-night pit stop off a Texas highway. I'd stumbled into something sinister, and time was running out. My name's Riley, and I was midway through a solo drive from Atlanta to Phoenix, a freelance illustrator hauling a portfolio of prints for a gallery show. The gig was a last-minute deal, good money for a tight deadline, and I'd been pushing through the night, fueled by gas station energy drinks and sheer grit. Rosie's Diner appeared like a beacon in the Panhandle's dark, its neon sign promising hot coffee and a chance to stretch my legs. I pulled into the gravel lot, expecting a quick bite and a jolt of caffeine. What I got was a descent into a nightmare I'm still trying to unravel. The diner was a time capsule. Red vinyl booths, checkered floor, a jukebox crooning Buddy Holly. But the vibe was off, electric with a tension I couldn't place. Despite the hour, the place was busy. Truckers, a few locals, a couple of road trippers like me, but conversations were hushed, eyes flicking to the clock above the counter. I slid into a booth, ordered meatloaf and coffee from a waitress whose smile was brittle, and tried to shake the feeling that I'd walked into a play where everyone but me knew the script. As my food arrived, I tried chatting with the waitress, Tammy, her name stitched on her apron. Lively for this late. Huh? She nodded, her gaze skittering to the clock. Yeah, it gets like this around now. Night owls, huh? I pressed, fishing for normalcy. She leaned closer, voice low. Look, you seem nice. So here's a tip. Eat fast and hit the road. You don't want to linger here too long. Before I could ask why, she was gone, bustling to another table. I sat, fork poised, her words gnawing at me. That's when the trucker at the counter turned, his weathered face set, and whispered his warning about midnight. As he left, others followed, moving with a haste that felt wrong for the hour, practically sprinting to their vehicles. I flagged Tammy again. What's going on? Why is everyone bailing? She glanced at the clock, 11:47 now, and sighed, fear flickering in her eyes. I shouldn't say, but weird stuff happens here at midnight. Been that way for years. Some say this spot's a thin place where things bleed through. Just finish up and go, okay? I laughed. Sound hollow. What, like ghosts? Her face stayed grim. Worse. Please. Move. I wanted to dismiss it as local hokum, a scare for tourists. But the diner's mood, the clenched jaws, the stolen glances, was too real. I gulped my coffee, tossed cash on the table, and stood to leave. But as I reached for the door, my breath caught. Where the exit had been was a blank wall, covered in the same faded wallpaper as the rest of the place. I blinked, sure I was mistaken, but the wall remained solid and unyielding. It's starting, someone whispered. I turned to see the remaining patrons, about 10, including Tammy, huddled in the diner's center. Tammy clutched a coffee pot like a shield, her bravado crumbling. What's starting? I demanded, panic rising. An old woman with a face like cracked leather spoke up. Midnight, son. 2 minutes to go. That's when they come. Who? I snapped, my voice sharp with fear. Before she could answer, the lights flickered, the jukebox lurching from Peggy Sue to a slow, discordant drone. The air chilled, my breath fogging despite the Texas heat. Circle up, the old woman barked. Don't look at him straight, and don't let him touch you. The group formed a tight ring facing outward. I joined them, pressed shoulder to shoulder with strangers, my heart pounding. Tammy shoved something into my hand, a shaker of salt. Salt and steel, she muttered, slows him down. I gripped the shaker, wanting to laugh at the absurdity, but the words died as shapes moved outside the windows, darker than the night, flowing like oil with a terrible intent. They pressed against the glass, which frosted over, cracks spiderwebbing the panes. As the clock struck midnight, the horror began. The shapes coalesced into vaguely human forms, their outlines shifting, limbs too long, faces melting and reforming. They seeped through the window cracks, oozing into the diner like a toxic mist. Someone whimpered. I felt a hand squeeze mine, the old woman's voice rising in a chant. Words in a tongue I didn't know, sharp and rhythmic. Others joined, their voices quavering but gaining strength. The shadow things circled us, their movements jerky, unnatural. I glimpsed eyes like burning coals, mouths that split too wide. The air thickened with a stench of ozone and rot. One reached for us, its claw-like hand grazing the circle. Instinctively, I flung salt at it. The thing recoiled, hissing like a shorted wire, its form fraying before it reformed. Time warped, stretching seconds into hours. My arm ached from holding the shaker, my throat raw from chanting words I didn't understand. Just when I thought we'd break, the old woman's voice hit a crescendo, and the air pulsed, a ripple that shook the diner. The shadows faltered, their forms dissolving, retreating through the shattered windows in a gust of frigid wind that carried their stench away. Then it was over, the silence deafening. We stood stunned, the only sounds our ragged breaths and the crunch of glass underfoot. Slowly the circle broke. Some wept, others stared blankly. Tammy spoke first. Everyone okay? Anyone touched? Murmurs confirmed no one was hurt, at least not physically. As if a spell had lifted, the diner stirred. People sweeping glass, righting tables, clinging to normalcy. I stood, salt shaker still in hand, trying to process what I'd seen. The old woman approached, her eyes weary but kind. First time, huh? You held up well. I found my voice. What were those things? Why here? Why midnight? She shook her head. Been coming every night for decades, trying to figure it out. All I know is they're getting bolder, and if we weren't here to push them back, she trailed off. The implication heavy. As dawn painted the desert pink, the diner's door reappeared. People left, nodding to each other like veterans of a secret war. I headed to my car, legs unsteady, mind reeling. As I opened the door, Tammy ran out, pressing a scrap of paper into my hand. If you're ever back this way and want to help, this is where we'll be. It was a schedule, dates, times, a roster of guardians holding the line against the dark. I pulled onto the highway, the night's events already blurring like a fever dream, but the salt shaker on my passenger seat and the paper in my pocket were proof it was real. I don't know if I'll return to Rosie's Diner. Part of me prays I never see it again, but another part, a part I'm still grappling with, knows I might. Because now I've seen what lurks in the cracks of the world, how can I not stand against it? If you're driving through the Texas night and see a diner glowing like a star, check the clock before you stop. And if midnight's near, keep driving. Unless, of course, you choose to fight. The radio hissed to life with a burst of static so sharp it made me flinch, cutting through the drone of my pickup's engine. Help! Please, anyone. I'm at the old relay tower off Route 50. It's here. It's watching me. The voice was frantic, raw with terror, before it drowned in a wail of interference. My grip tightened on the wheel, the Nevada desert stretching black and endless beyond my headlights. Logic screamed to ignore it, to keep driving through the night. But a decade on these lonely roads had taught me one unshakable rule. When someone's voice breaks like that, you don't turn away. With a heavy sigh, I swung onto the next turnoff, unaware that I was steering straight into a horror that would haunt my every mile. My name's Dana Pierce, and I've been a courier for years, hauling packages across the West's forgotten highways. I've seen my share of the road's oddities, ghostly hitchhikers who vanish at dawn, mirages that mimic towns, strange hums in the air no engine could make. But nothing prepared me for what I found at the derelict relay tower that night. It was a routine run, Reno to Salt Lake City with a load of medical supplies, a job I could do half asleep. The radio kept me company, cycling through classic rock and the occasional trucker's banter, until that desperate plea shattered the rhythm. I thought it might be a prank at first, some bored kid with a hot mic, but the voice's edge, the way it cracked on its watching me, hit too deep. I keyed the mic, trying to raise them. "This is Dana on Route 50. I hear you. What's your situation?" Nothing but static answered, thick and grating. I knew the relay tower, a skeletal relic from the 60s, abandoned when newer tech made it obsolete. It stood alone in a barren stretch of desert, its rusted frame a landmark for drivers like me. Why would anyone be out there at 2 a.m.? The turnoff was a faint dirt track, barely visible in the dark. My headlights carved through the void, picking out sagebrush and the glint of broken glass. A knot of unease tightened in my gut. What if this was a trap? Couriers get targeted sometimes, lured by fake calls to remote spots. But the memory of that voice, its naked fear, pushed me on. The tower loomed ahead, a jagged silhouette against the stars, its base cluttered with crumbling concrete and tangled wire. I pulled up, leaving the engine running, the silence outside so absolute it felt like a weight. "Hello?" I called, stepping out, my voice swallowed by the desert. "I got your call on the CB. You okay?" No answer, just the creak of the tower's metal in the wind. I grabbed my flashlight, its beam slicing the dark, and approached the base. The ground was littered with debris, rusted bolts, shattered bulbs, a faded sign reading, "Keep out." My boots crunched on gravel, the sound unnaturally loud. Every instinct urged me to turn back, but I couldn't shake the thought of someone in trouble, waiting for a stranger's help. The tower's access hatch hung open, a black rectangle that drank my light. I leaned in, calling again. "Anyone here?" A faint scrape answered from within, like something dragging across metal. My pulse quickened. "Hey, you hurt? I'm coming in." I stepped inside, the air cool and stale, heavy with the smell of rust and something sour like old blood. My flashlight swept over a narrow chamber, stripped wires, broken panels, and there in the corner, a CB radio, its power light glowing faintly, impossible without a source. I froze, my mind racing. How was it on? The tower had no power, hadn't for decades. Around the radio, scratched into the concrete, were strange spiraling marks, dark and glistening, as if drawn in something wet. I took a step back, the silence now a living thing, pressing against me. Then I heard it, a low, thrumming hum, not quite sound, more a vibration in my bones, coming from deeper within the tower. The hairs on my arms stood up as I turned, my light catching something that stopped my heart. In the shadows of a rusted stairwell stood a thing. It was vaguely human, but wrong. Too tall, its limbs folding at angles no body could sustain. Its skin was gray, slick like wet clay, and its face, God, its face was a featureless slab, save for two sunken eyes that burned with a cold. Silver light. It didn't move, just stood, watching. Its presence a weight that crushed the air from my lungs. My body locked, fear pinning me as the thing tilted its head, as if curious. Then it flowed forward, not walking, but gliding, its form blurring at the edges. I don't know how I moved. Panic surged and I bolted, my flashlight clattering to the ground. I scrambled out the hatch, the hum swelling behind me, now laced with a guttural rasp that wasn't a voice but carried intent. I threw myself into the truck, fumbling the keys, my breath ragged. The engine roared as I slammed it into gear, tires spitting gravel. In the rear view, I saw it, emerging from the tower. Taller now, its eyes like twin moons, and others behind it, shapes unfolding from the dark, moving with that same liquid grace. I floored it, the truck lurching onto the highway, my heart pounding so hard I thought it had burst. I drove until dawn, not stopping, not daring to look back. When I finally pulled into a truck stop, the sun high, I was shaking, my clothes damp with sweat. My logbook showed a 4-hour gap, time I couldn't account for. The CB radio from the tower was on my passenger seat, though I don't remember grabbing it, its power light still faintly glowing. I thought about going to the cops, spilling the whole story, but what could I say? That I'd answered a ghost call and met something not of this world? They'd think I was high or unhinged. So I kept quiet, delivered my load, and tried to bury it. But the road's different now. Every static burst on the CB makes me flinch. Every shadow feels alive. I stashed the radio in a lockbox, buried it in my garage, but some nights I swear I hear it. Faint, pleading, that same voice calling for help. I dug into the relay tower's history later, finding scraps in old forms and diner talk. Drivers spoke of missing colleagues, of strange signals on Route 50, of a place where the desert opens to something else. Some called it a haunting, others a rift. A few whispered of things that feed on the lost. I don't know what I saw, what it wanted, or why it let me go. But it's out there, in the places where roads grow thin, where the night holds secrets no map can chart. I still drive, but I stick to daylight runs, and I keep my CB off no matter how lonely the miles. If you're out on Route 50 and hear a voice begging for rescue, think twice before you turn off. Sometimes the call isn't from someone in need, it's the bait, and what's waiting isn't human. Keep driving, don't look back, and pray you never find the tower, because some signals lead to places you can't return from.